Good afternoon, my name is Thomas Caldwell. I'm the programmer at the Melbourne International Film Festival. Today's event is being held on the traditional lands of the Boon, Wurrung and Wurundjeri peoples of the Kulin Nation people, and I wish to acknowledge them as traditional owners. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and the elders from other communities who may be here today. Welcome to Alia Shawkat in Conversation, a MIFF Talks event presented in partnership with the Wheeler Centre. This year, the MIFF Talks program is presented by The Age. Alia is a highly sought-after actor in both film and television who can be seen at MIFF this year in the Ethan Hawke-directed biopic Blaze, which tells the story of singer-songwriter Blaze Foley. Alia also recently starred in the independent film Duck Butter, which he co-wrote and executive produced, as well as continuing to star in the second season of genre-bending mystery comedy Search Party, and the fifth season of cult comedy, you may have heard of this one, Arrested Development. Other notable films include Green Room, 20th Century Women, Nasty Baby and Whip It, while her other television appearances include Transparent, Drunk History, Portlandia and Broad City. Off-screen, she is a talented jazz singer, pianist and accomplished painter and illustrator. Now, moderating today's conversation is Lorin Clarke, a writer and presenter across various media, including theatre, radio, print and television. She writes regular columns for The Big Issue and Crikey. Her children's book, Our Last Trip to the Market, made the CBCA notables this year. It's also very popular in my household. Lorin has written, produced and presented for commercial and community radio as well as for the ABC. She hosts the award-winning Stupidly Small podcast and performs in her own ABC radio serial, The Fitzroy Diaries. Please welcome Alia Shawkat and Lorin Clarke.
Thank you. Thank you, Thomas. What a pro.
Yeah, I felt like we came out too soon.
I know. We're all exhausted listening to that list of amazing things you've been doing. When this session booked out in approximately a nanosecond, I saw all of the people online, you know, talking about how they were gonna, let's go to this, let's go to that, and tagging each other in it and things. And I noticed that some of them, that they came from sort of one section of a Venn diagram a lot of the time. So, you know, there were Arrested Development fans, for instance, or Search Party fans, or people coming to MIFF and just staying at MIFF and never going home. And so, but they seemed like quite distinct groups. Like maybe if you are a fan of Whip It, you know, you might not see Blaze, for instance. So it kind of made me think that a good first question for you might be, like, how do you pick, how do you curate your approach to your work?
Yeah, maybe we should separate the groups, just so we all know who we are.
That's right, teams.
And then fight. Yeah, how do I pick? You know, I've been acting since I was 9, and I'm 29, so that's 20 years. And, you know, it doesn't necessarily feel that way in some ways, but when I was younger, it just came out of this feeling of wanting to do it. And my parents were very supportive, and yet not too supportive. You know, they weren't like stage parents. So they were kind of just following my lead. And I remember I would just audition, and I got lucky that the things I was cast in were really interesting projects. You know, I did Arrested Development. I auditioned for it when I was 13. And we wrapped when I was 18. And so at that time, I was just auditioning in the stuff that it was like the right sensibility. And then I remember when I was 18, I kind of was like, oh, I don't know if this is right for me. I was feeling really insecure. I didn't really look the type of the kind of girls that were getting cast. I was always the ethnic best friend, which I did well.
Yeah, you did.
But I did have a kind of like a bitterness towards the idea of this. You know, it's a lot of fantasy that's projected. And then, you know, a couple years passed and I was focusing on different things, and I rediscovered it again, where I was like, no, if I'm going to do this, it's because I really want to, and not for any other reason. So I started approaching projects really about the kind of stories I wanted to tell, which sounds like an easy answer, but also more about the people who are making them. So I did a lot of indie movies, but it was really because I connected with the filmmakers. And, because I remember when I was 16, I did this really bad Christmas movie called Deck the Halls. Still plays every Christmas time in the States. But it was really rough, and nobody was happy on the set. And it was the first job I got that I didn't like, but I was like, yeah, you say yes to a job. I was like, I got cast, so I got to do it. And after that, I was like, no, this isn't worth it. I'd rather be doing other things. So, a lot goes into it, and I still sometimes make, fucked up decisions where I'm like, oh, this wasn't right, but I'm going to get through it. But yeah, just kind of, you have to imagine yourself actually being on the set and doing it and being in the wardrobe and like, would this be challenging? And as time passes, it still evolves all the time. It's never necessarily the easiest, clearest answer. I'm just like, this seems like something I haven't done before, so I'm gonna try that. And, just hope for the best, kind of.
And you talked about the people you work with, and you've just done, like Duck Butter, for instance. Is a you project. You were involved in all of the ways. Has that been a big part of how you want to work? Is having some kind of autonomy in the project?
Ideally, yeah. If I got offered a Star Wars part, I wouldn't be like, no.
Right.
I want to be more involved. And they're like, we will help you be involved. But yeah, I think that's the goal. When I was in my early 20s, living in LA especially, and a lot of actors and writer friends of mine, we were all doing well, but we were also not as focused. We were just enjoying our lives, and we're like, oh, I got a job. I get to go out of town for 2 months, and it was fun, but we weren't as engaged as I've found myself to be the last couple of years, where a project isn't just a gig anymore. And I've been more inspired to tell stories, and Duck Butter was the first project that I wrote with my friend Miguel Arteta that came to fruition. So I had written other things with friends, and then after that certain hump, we were just like, let's just go to dinner, like, fuck it. And it's hard because, we're very lucky living in LA, and I realize I have a lot of opportunity, but it's, you naturally compare yourself. You look at other people, I look at Donald Glover, and I'm like, how the hell am I gonna get there? It's just never enough. So the self-doubt for any artist is always a tricky balance. But yeah, especially now after making Duck Butter was something that, like, I look at all my, inspiring journal entries. Like, one day I'll make Duck Butter. I was like, as long as I make Duck Butter. And I just used to wake up and think about it every day, and it was like really kind of haunted me. I was like, one day, and it's hard to get a movie made, especially with the content of what the film was about. So yeah, my goal is I want to tell my stories. And I realized that, Duck Butter was a very personal project, but I want to go even deeper. I realized that the kind of writer I am is like, it has to be about what I know. It has to be about experiences. And I think the more you're willing to delve into the stuff you're scared about yourself, the more powerful your work can be. So I'm trying to face my shit as much as possible.
And facing your shit, which is a beautiful expression, and thanks for bringing it to the table.
I think Galileo said it.
You must have, because in order to do so, for those who haven't seen Duck Butter, it is basically the film. It's a film about two people who decide to have a relationship, two women who decide that the bullshit of having a relationship is just too arduous for words. So let's speed it up, I think is the expression, and cram it into 24 hours. Yeah. Why was that the film that you woke up every morning wanting to make? What was it was it that kind of vulnerability that you wanted to tap into? Because I feel like vulnerability is something that a lot of your work kind of involves as a performer as well.
Right. Well, thank you. Yeah, when Miguel and I sat down and with the question of like, why does it hurt so much? The idea of love, even if it's not the right person for you, you still want to make it work somehow. There is a lot of sad but true aspects of my character that are very true to myself. Like, I've grown a little bit since then, but not much, about being with someone and not being able to reveal how you actually feel about them in the moment, and kind of running away from it. So it was an insecurity of mine and something that I had just always had a challenge with in relationships. So when Miguel and I, coming from very different perspectives, we're both talking about the same thing, of kind of being obsessed with someone and being like, oh, they make me feel this way, and I'm addicted to that, so I'll follow that. And then after a while, you just can't keep the defenses up that long, and you just want to disappear. You just want to hide and run away, and the other person's like, whoa, 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 where are you going? And you're like, nowhere, just the bathroom. I'll be right back, everything's fine. So yeah, it was definitely me facing a lot of my, issues or whatever, but through making it, and kind of the end of the film, what I hope comes across is that through all of it, she changes a little bit. She evolves a little, instead of this idea of a lot of romantic stories that usually the end of the film is when they meet the person. And they're like, and that's it. And I'm like, the story doesn't start till after, like at least a month after you've been together, and you have to actually see each other every day. I obviously have an issue with relationships. But yeah, it did help me, process. But as I was saying earlier, it's like I'm not the kind of writer who's like, all right, we're in outer space, and all of a sudden, like, it has to be from a very guttural place, and like my worst fears. It's the most fun to expose.
I actually wondered about that in terms of how it is on set. And it's interesting, one of the things that I think people who aren't actors who watch stuff think is they go, oh, how do they do the kissing? And, there is a kind of fascination with that kind of the degree to which you have to be kind of self-aware as an actor because you're portraying this character, but there is potentially a self-consciousness as well. And in Blaze, you play the part of Sybil Rosen, who co-wrote the script, and she was on set. Is that true?
Yeah, every day, yeah.
She was on set. So how did your self-consciousness go there?
Well,
you're playing somebody who's in the room with you.
Yeah, it was the first time I'd ever done that. Ethan Hawke, who directed it, I remember him telling me, he's like, so Sybil's really involved, she's going to be on set, but, as an actor, he was like, I am aware that it might be weird. So if at any moment it's weird, like, let's just have some kind of code word or whatever. And I was like, yeah, that'll be easy. Where I'm like, can you get her out of here? And I was a little, because we all have different processes, and I was like, I'm not doing an impression of her. It's not like she was like David Bowie. I was like, I'm not doing a character. I had to create Sybil on my own, as well as Ben playing Blaze. But when I got there and I met her, she's just so unbelievable. She's very magical. She had a very maternal presence on set. So it was weird when she wasn't there. I was like, wait, where's Sybil at? And she never, she was never saying, like, that's not how I was back then. She was kind of like going through this very psychedelic experience of watching her life, kind of being able to relive her memories and process them from a different place. So I really felt more so than on any other project on that, I was just kind of this like, I just had to be present and kind of let it work through me. And Ben, it was his first acting experience, and he's like one of the best actors I've ever worked with because he was so present. And he's so much like Blaze, or the folklore of him, where he tells stories and jokes when he talks. He's just like a natural, like sing-songy kind of, sage. So it was really easy to fall in love with him, not in like the regular ways, but we totally just fell in love. Like we just had the best time. And I remember the first night we were going to like a show, we were on this like old school bus, and I sat next to Sybil, and I was like, how is it seeing Ben, looking like Blaze kind of and acting like him? And she's like, it's great, I get to fall in love all over again. And I was like, that's crazy. I was like, I've always had a hard time falling in love. And she's like, well, you get to do it too. And I was like, God damn, I do. So that was pretty cool.
What was that quite scripted, or it's a biopic about Blaze Foley, but you don't need to know anything about him or country and western music really, because it's about it's kind of about people and how we can try and be a version of ourselves as hard as we might, and sometimes it just isn't how the cookie crumbles. But was that a kind of workshopped thing, or was it quite scripted? Or because there's a lot of stuff in Eden in the treehouse, which is like not actually, there aren't any words. It's just kind of you cats hanging out.
Yeah.
Like, how did you do all that stuff?
It was scripted, but in the treehouse, it wasn't really.
Right.
It was amazing. It was really cold. We were in like Louisiana in the wintertime, and we had to play it for summer and all these different seasons in there. And it was really a treehouse they built, you know, but it was really cool. And like even one night, like Ben and I and a couple other people like slept out there with beanbags and stuff, and it was like really cool. Not beanbags, sleeping bags. That would have been weird. We're like, let's just relax. Yeah, it was a really special place and very small. So when we were doing these scenes, Ethan, even when I first Skyped with him, would reference kind of a John Cassavetes style of filmmaking, which I'm all about, and like he's like one of my favorite filmmakers. And pretty much the essence of that is that the actors you hire are very involved in it, meaning that it's not just dialogue they create, but who ends up playing these roles, you kind of build it towards them. So once we were there was moments where we really forgot anybody else was in there. And I normally don't ever do this, but like we were having hot toddies and smoking weed, and like we were just like so in our own zone. And then we'd be like, all right, cut, we got it. And we're like, what the fuck? What are you doing here? And it was really like, it felt so intimate, which, you know, those were the things I was the most, not worried about, but was like, those have to feel intimate. It has to feel like this couple that's been living in this idyllic world, you know, which is like very few people, I imagine, or at least that I know of, get to experience that, where you're so outside of reality. And I feel like we were able to create essence of that. But yeah, there's one of the scenes where we're talking about insecurity, and, you know, because my character wanted to be an actress, that was improvised. Right. You know, so it was a conversation we were having, and just talking, kind of in character, kind of not. And then Ethan just started rolling, and we were playing a card game. And it was very real, you know, and yeah, that scene ended up being in the movie, and Ethan's like, that's one of my favorite scenes. And I was like, no, we came up with it. So.
Good time to ask this question. You seem to have, I mean, I was looking through the descriptions in terms of how things get classified as genres, and a lot of your things are / comedy. Oh, yeah. Like, you know, like what's Search Party? It's got a hilarious combination. It's like, you know, whodunit / no, but you know, it's two genres you never usually see together. Having that sense of humour, having that kind of wryness seems to be something that you take with you, even on projects like Blaze, which is a serious project, but there's a kind of lightness there. And also there's sometimes you're playing the character who seems the most to be the filter through which the audience experiences the other characters. Are you kind of winking at the audience a little bit? Is that something that you consciously do, or, you know, is that just kind of what appeals to you, do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like genres are definitely getting blurred more now. You know, I did this film, Green Room, which I love, and that's a super genre movie, like horror, scary. I was so excited to do it because of that reason. You know, I was like, I get to be terrified all the time. You know, that's really the main energy I'm playing in that. But yeah, it's hard to know. I think something like Search Party, for example, I really love the script, and we shot the pilot kind of like an independent film, so we didn't know if we were gonna make it. And I think that's honestly why I got cast, and the other people too. Like the creators were like, these are the people we want. Because if it was for a network, I think so much would have changed about it. But we were able to make it exactly how we wanted, and then pitch the show. And when we saw the pilot, and even the first season, while we were shooting it, like John Early, who's, you know, so hilarious on it, he would look at me and be like, are we in 2 different shows? You know, and I was like, honestly, I don't know. Like, you know, because sometimes, you know, from the surface, his performance, him and Meredith are like, it's a lot bigger, and then all of a sudden I'm playing it really serious and subtle, and And it's hard to tell because tone is such a hard thing to grasp, I think.
Yeah.
And you just connect to it or you don't. You know, the idea of when something works and it doesn't. And when we saw the first season, we were like, well, whatever we did, it seemed to work. Like, we really, we're so proud of it. And we're like, oh, it's great. So it's almost like that. It's like you have to, making any project for film or TV, it's such a collaborative experience. I mean, there's so many people on a crew. It's like summer camp. And everyone's role is very important. Of course, the actors seem to get the most attention from it. And it's like I was very involved in the making of it, but it's such a group effort. So it's like everyone has to do their best. And then you just hope it kind of all comes together and is edible by the end of the day, But yeah, I don't really look at things as genre. I mean, I love comedy in the sense that life is one big joke. So you gotta be able to laugh at some stuff. Yeah, I did a short film recently that, was about World War II, Nazi Poland. And I was like, and it was interesting. I was like, I've never done this. It was like an action kind of thing. And I was like, this is cool. But it was exhausting also for that reason.
Yeah, right.
Because in between takes, I would try to be making jokes with the crew where I'm like, hi, I'm Alina. I save Jewish babies. Nice to meet you. Like trying to joke. And then I was like, no, I got to be serious here. This baby might die. So you have no reference of what the story's about. But anyways. I do enjoy having a mixture of stuff. That's the kind of stuff I like to watch as well. So.
Just in terms of working in the States at the moment, with the sort of political theatre taking place on the main stage, does that change the sort of stuff that's getting made, and does it change the way you feel about your work and the projects you want to work on, or does it just... Are those two separate things, do you think, for you?
It definitely affects it. There's a lot I could say about it. I think that, first of all, to a degree, there's so much amazing art internationally, obviously, but there seems to be a hyper-focus on the States, pop culture-wise, and when it comes to film and movies. And I think it's because we treat our celebrity culture as royalty or as politicians, sadly. So it's a very strange thing that everyone was kind of looking to us to be like, what's the best, You got to make it in the States, and it's got to be, But, on the other hand, it's strange being someone who is making art at a time like this, because it has definitely changed the conversations that we're all having and what we want to make. I think about the stuff I used to read 10 years ago, 5 years ago, compared to now, and at least for myself, I just have a much clearer perspective on what's a waste of time. I'm like, how is this going to give any perspective to anything? How is this going to share a story I haven't seen before? When we talk about casting, I was like, it always used to seem so normal that the story was always from a white guy's perspective, and the girl was just the thing to get, and she was always white and blonde, and it was just like, that was always the narrative. And now there is this theme of it being, popular to not be like that, which I sometimes am a little bitter. I'm like, oh, so you're hiring me because I'm an ethnic woman? Is that why you're hiring me? And I'm like, whatever, I'll take the job anyways. Like, give it to me. But at least when it comes to stuff that I want to make, I definitely am like, it has to be, it's as I said before, it's making me like look inward about the things I used to be ashamed about, the things I was scared to talk about. The conversations that would happen that I would kind of just pretend like it didn't affect me. A lot of those things, and the people that I know and who are making things, that seems to be the tone. And it's very exciting, and it's scary too. But it's very exciting. I mean, you start to see all the African-American work that's coming out and how successful it is. And I feel like there's still, sadly, it's like everything seems to be happening so much faster just because of technology. They're like, Me Too and Black Panther, we're done. And I'm like, no, it's just starting. The people who are in the power seats are still old white men. There's still some good ones, but it's strange. I'm like, until, that side has like an equal mix of people, it's not really gonna start changing. So, they're like, Black Panther and Get Out and all these things are doing so well. I'm like, yeah, because these are audiences who've never seen themselves really represented this way before. And then on top of that, they're unique stories for that reason. So it's like, duh, like Girls Trip. I freaking loved Girls Trip. And when that came out, I was like, how is there not, like the audiences are just so hungry for it now. And so much of work, even more so, the dialogue between audiences and the artists is so much closer. People are able to say exactly how they feel about something instantly, and they support things so viciously. They're just like, this we stand behind, this we don't. And it's not as isolated. We're not like on this, this top of a castle anymore, like Hollywood. It's so much more like immersive. So I think it's also the only way to kind of survive. It's hard enough to say you're an artist and own that. And then if you are going to be that, then you really have to kind of take responsibility and be a part of the conversation. Otherwise, you're not really going to last. No.
And so what does that mean people always hate answering this question, so I'm going to disguise it. What does that mean we can expect from you in the future?
Ooh, is that the disguised version? Well, yeah, I mean, I'm definitely working on something that I mentioned.
And are you writing?
Yeah, I'm writing. I'm about to shoot the 3rd season of Search Party, which is very exciting. Yeah, it gets crazy.
It gets crazy.
Well, I like to describe, I always say like the first season was like Nancy Drew themes. The second one was like Hitchcock. And then like this one is just like a media frenzy. So it's all about like attention and fame and like the griminess of what we think, like how we project on people, like what they are, and hate them before we even know who they are at all. So it's gonna be really fun. And then I am writing something that is kind of the most personal thing about my family, about my dad who's Middle Eastern. He owns a strip club, and let that sink in. So I'm writing that story. And I'm really kind of digging deep parts of it. But yeah, as I said, I'm just like ready to expose kind of everything. So.
Is it?
Hope you like it. I'm like, oh God, what am I doing?
Now? I'm looking down here because some of the excellent people in today's audience send in some questions directly for you, for which I thank them. Some of them are more sensible than others. But this one I quite liked because I think this is, you and I were speaking earlier about the response that something like Duck Butter gets, being a queer film, being a film with women in it of a certain age, fumbling their way through all of that early stuff. This question is, I am a young female artist in Australia and I am just coming to the realisation, to a realisation about my queerness. Do you have any advice to a queer female artist stuck in a certain idea of what people think you are?
I'm still asking myself that. But yeah, what advice? Accepting ourselves is a very tricky thing in general. It takes so much time. And I think that's the beauty of being an artist is that it's not about being rewarded for it, but the more honest you are of the struggles you're going through, the more people will respond to it. The more you try to act like you're cool, the worse it is. A very specific recommendation I have is I just started taking clown classes. Yeah, so clowning, like the real term of it, is this teacher I had said, comedians tell a joke and a clown is the joke. And it's about sitting in the shit. So I would do something and then you wouldn't laugh. And then I'd just respond and just kind of feel it honestly. And then that might make you laugh. And I've been loving it so much because it's just so fun. But on top of it, it's not even like an acting class. It's really more for like life and for writing actually. That it's really trying to separate from the idea of being cool. And I think so much of the ideas, every generation, but it seems like even more now with Instagram and everything being like, this is who I am, and it has nothing to do with who you are, is this idea of what someone who's got it together looks like. Someone who's young and successful and queer and cool and all these things. And it's like, no one's really that cool. And something that I respond to as an audience member is that when someone's able to expose their real self, which is the hardest thing to do. So, yeah, I hope that helps. Take clown class. I really think it helps.
That's good. And do you think, I mean, the response to, I think there are a lot of people who will see themselves in duck butter, and I think you have already had responses along those lines. And then there's the response when it goes out into the world, and you're talking about how it being on Netflix kind of changes that. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, we premiered it at the Tribeca Film Festival, and you know, I was so involved in making it, and so when it came out, it was this like huge high, you know, at the night of the premiere, and then the next day I was like, and it's over. You know, it was like this kind of feeling where, you know, it's so hard for an independent film to feel like a lot of people saw it or it made some kind of difference or resonated with people. And then also a lot of the reviews were like super mixed, and, you know, we had some good ones, but I felt like there was a lot of people, older men, but I was like, they don't get it, you know, and I was like really upset. And Alia Costa, actually, who plays Sergio, was so amazing about it. She was like, this movie isn't for them. She's like, it doesn't matter. You made this movie, you know, it's amazing. She's just so cool. I was like, I know, but still. So, yeah, then when it got out on Netflix, you know, when you make a film, you're like, I want to see it on the big screen. I want it to be out for a while. But Netflix is like amazing. So many people are able to see it now. And then also people are able to contact me through Twitter, or, you know, they don't know how much I look at it, and to talk about their responses to it or how they feel. And then, you know, a couple other screenings, you know, a lot of, you know, mainly younger queer girls would come up to me and talk about how much it resonated with them and how real it felt, and I could see the vulnerability of how they reacted. They're like, yeah, it kind of freaked me out, but I really liked it, you know, and that, I was like, that meant everything to me, you know. I really did make it for them. You know, everyone else is willing to enjoy it, but it was to share a perspective that I had felt and that I talk about with my friends, and that we are always talking about, you know, till we turn blue, about like, how do we be ourselves with people that we care about, or why sex is so confusing, and how, yeah, just sex. It's like, God damn it. It's hard.
Wasn't it originally written for a man and a woman?
It was, yeah. It was a heterosexual dynamic, you know, a while before, but because Miguel and I, you know, he's like from Costa Rica, and he's like, you know, 50, and we're just very different people, but very good friends. So when we were talking about this idea, it was always like, yeah, man, woman, right? Okay, here we go. And what ended up happening was that the writing just kept getting blocked. It was like, first of all, we realized how much we were going to have to see a penis. And we were just like, do we wanna? I don't know. And then, like, a lot of the story is that they come every hour on the hour, and we were like, can a guy even do it? Like, I don't know. There would have to be discussions about, like, are you hard again? Like, it was just, like, not what we wanted to talk about. And then also, the main problem was that if we realized it would be a story about, like, men and women are different. And I'm just, like, so bored of that narrative. And I was also, at the time, seeing a woman, and it was funny, I was, like, right in front of me the whole time, and I was like, no, it has to be a guy. You know, and I was like, what is wrong with me? Like, it was also another part of revealing of myself, where I was like, oh, am I kind of timid to share something that's even more personal?
Yeah.
But then ultimately too, we Skyped with Alia Costa. She's in this brilliant movie called Victoria. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's like all takes place in one shot, this German filmmaker. And we saw that movie, we're like, this person's unbelievable. And we offered her a smaller part of the movie, and she said, I'll do it if I could come for the 24 hours. Because the second act of it takes place in 24 hours. We shot it in 24 hours. So we stayed awake for 24 hours filming. We had 2 crews for legality reasons, but most of, you know, like Laia, the director, the DP, Hillary, and the AD, Drew, we all stayed awake that long. And it was very experimental filmmaking. And she was like, I want to be there for that, just to see it. And we were like, that's the most Sergio thing we've ever heard, you know? And then once we offered her the part, kept the name, Sergio, every story problem we had just solved itself, and it just started moving so quickly. And we were like, oh, this is the story, this is it. And now I can't imagine it. It wouldn't have existed if it was a heterosexual couple.
Yeah, it's blowing my mind thinking about it. I've got another question here from somebody about, oh yeah, it's kind of touching on some of that stuff we talked about earlier, to do with Search Party. Search Party is so sharply written and has so much to say about young people and how they interact. How do you feel about how your generation is represented in media?
In media? Yeah. I've never, not to sound like I don't know, elitist, that's not even the term. I never like felt like, yeah, me and my generation, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know. Probably because I'm American. I'm just like, it's just me against the world. But, you know, I think that what I love so much about Search Party is the creators, Charles Rogers and Sarah Violet Bliss, they made a film called Fort Tilden that's definitely mocking millennials a lot more, a little more directly, but in a way that was very refreshing and really funny and not like, oh, I've seen it before, like we get it. And then, you know, in Search Party, they do such a good job of creating these characters that we recognize in our world, especially living in these like bigger cities. People you're having brunch next to, you're just like, oh, they're the worst. But then you're saying the same thing. And I think that's what hipsters or whatever the millennial, you know, thing is hating something that you are so much. And I think Dory represents that really well, where she acts like she's just this innocent, like nice person. That's Dory. Yeah. But she's not. Yeah. You know, her actions speak a lot louder, and she keeps denying it. She's like, I didn't do that. They're like, dude, you just did it. Yeah, I just saw you. So I think it's a great, and the mystery aspect is just like a really fun way to tell the story. But I think they do such a good job of, yeah, they are kind of mocking a generation, but the real themes that they're mocking are how we judge ourselves so harshly and are still trying to be something that we hate, which is kind of, I feel like, every generation, you know, to a degree. But we're just in Brooklyn, you know, so it's like really heavy. It's really strong out there. Yeah.
And are you going to become one of those people who used to be an actor and now writes and directs, or is acting in stuff like Search Party, is that an opportunity for you to just do a different,
bless you,
a different form of, you know, a different way of coming at art, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I do love acting still. There could be a day where I show up and I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. That might happen, but
definitely not suggesting it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I still really enjoy it, but as I said, I definitely like being, you know, involved. I don't like just being the actor anymore, because that's kind of like, it's a lot more lonely, and you just have to sit in the trailer, like waiting for like a long ass time until someone knocks on your door. Yeah. And then also when you're not working, you're still in that phase of just being like, I hope I'm good enough. I hope I can. And I'm not one of those actors. I always use Alan Cummings as an example. He's a brilliant actor, and he's someone who could like be anything and like really absorb. And I'm like, I got a range. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna be like Macbeth or whatever.
But your
I'm just
range,
like doing my own thing.
Your range includes, as Thomas said before, you can sing, you make art, you do fine art, don't you?
I paint.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's fine yet, though. Just getting there.
It's fine if it involves painting.
It's
fine. Look, it's fine. No, it's fine. But what? You know, is that a different? Are you using a different muscle when you're doing that kind of thing? Are you expressing yourself differently? Is it something you do when you're exhausted with acting? You turn to painting for a bit, or are they? You know, like I think a lot of people just do one thing. So it's an interesting thing that you do all those.
Thanks. I mean, it's necessary for me. They do feed each other. I've been able to start. I got a studio in LA, so I've been painting a lot more. And when I'm not acting, it's like it's as much of a passion as mine, the painting. So when I'm not acting, it's great to kind of shut that off and I get to dress like this every day, and that part, my least favorite part about acting, it's so weird, is having to wear somebody else's clothes. I hate it. I'm just like, okay, yeah, this just doesn't feel right, but I'll wear it. I just like love being in my own clothes. So I like that. Just getting closer to, whoever I think I am. And it's like I get to play in that world more. But they're very different aspects, but they do feed each other. Because like last year I was working as an actor kind of consistently, and then I got home, and as an actor, you're treated like a child on set. It's like ridiculous. They're like, you're going to the bathroom? Okay. Do you want a snack before the bathroom or after the bathroom? And I was like, I don't know. I'll tell you later. And it's like, you're just like, I'm free. And like everyone's just like guiding you. And then when you rap, and then you're like at home, you're like, am I hungry? Do I want to eat? Where do I go? And then you get really hungry and you're like, great, everything's closed. So it's so sad, but it's like, there's aspects that are like that. And that part terrifies me. I was like, I love acting and making work and stuff, but I'm like, I gotta be a better person. So I do find that, the painting and other aspects help balance out just like a normal life structure. And it's not as much about attention, or it's not that it's about attention with actors, but you're giving a lot on set. You're like, hey, Bobby, how's the kids? Like you're just like moving and interacting a lot. So you're feeding. Yeah. So when you're on set, you have a lot of energy. It's all about energy, even if it's like a quiet scene or whatever. And with painting and writing, it's very silent. It's about kind of absorbing and then thinking about everything you just saw and kind of digesting it. So it's a cycle, like or a burst, whatever.
And what about the role of the audience in each of those things? Like when you're making a film or filming something, as opposed to when you're doing your fine art, or singing, is your audience, have you got your audience in your head to the same degree, or do you phase it in and out according to different what you're doing, different media?
Audiences are I don't know, what are you? It's definitely different with different mediums. I mean, to go back to clowning, it's all about an audience. So you perform as a clown and you're feeding off the audience. So you're looking at them and going off of how they react to what you do, to be very spontaneous in it. But it's all about being connected to them, whereas when you're acting, you have to forget anyone's there. If we're doing a scene, it's like I'm just pretending it's you and me and nobody else, and I have to really convince myself nobody else is there. With painting, you make something, and then people will see it a long time later, and they're like, so what is this supposed to be? And I'm like, I don't know, you tell me. Like, is it a horse?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Like, there's no wrong answer.
Yeah.
I weirdly have the most confidence in painting. I'm like, right? That's it. It is what it is. Because I like that it's like a Rorschach test.
Yeah.
And people love to solve it. They're like, I figured it out. It's a hat and a donkey. And I'm like, there's no answer. So I don't care what you think it is, honestly. But yeah, because there's a release, it's already done. I'm not evolving it while it's happening.
Yeah.
And also I'm just like free of it. I was like, oh yeah, the work's been done.
Yeah.
So it's like out of my hands.
How about live stuff? Do you like theater or?
Well, I'm hoping to become a professional clown. That's my future.
But is that something, does that surely the live aspect kind of digs into those moments of like having to engage directly with your shit, as you say?
Totally. I mean, I'm open to anything, different kinds of formats. With the singing stuff, I sang with a jazz band in New Orleans for a while, and I do love singing, but I'm never like writing my own, shit. So that is definitely a relationship to the audience, but that again is a very different energy up there. I like to sing jazz songs, so it's like I like to be a little drunk. It's like a whole different thing. I don't know. It's more of like feeling the environment, and you kind of become an instrument, at least with jazz music, It's not just like me and a mic like bopping around. It's like I'm just like trying to fit in with the vibe of the instruments on the stage. So, yeah, I don't remember the question.
Who cares? We got to hear about, jazz bands and drunkenness, so that's fine. One last question from a listener that I wanted to ask is here, which is, so many of your performances seem very natural, especially in projects that aren't scripted. Which character is most similar to you?
Which character? I'll like reference something nobody's ever seen.
I mean, do you feel like connected to the characters that you play? You must have to, surely, in every instance, yeah?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a part of me in every character I play. As I said, I'm no Alan Cummings, so I'm not like getting a walk and it's just like, no, it's how I walk. But there's definitely different aspects. Yeah, it's about the way, I mean, not to sound all accurate, but it's about the perspective I choose to be in. So, something like Dory, there's definitely a lot of aspects of me and Dory, and yet we're very different. Like, when we started it, she reminded me a lot of myself when I was like 16. So I was kind of connecting to that aspect of me, which is still present, the like insecure side of me, the one who thought kindness was just being polite meant being kind and a good person. And after a while, hopefully you get to realize that that's not the case. You have to speak up for yourself and be like, no, I don't like that. But yeah, there's maybe Funke, there's definitely a lot of aspects of her that's just like the stuck, angry teen. I mean, that's how I am around my parents still, sadly. A state of arrested development. But
price of admission.
Yeah,
Right
got your tickets. I'll record that on anyone's phone. But yeah, I mean, yeah, there's definitely, and also the parts, especially the last handful of years, I want to choose parts that there's something about them. That's why it's also encouraging me to write more. There's something in them that I want to work on myself. So it's like, sometimes it gets kind of psychedelic when you think about, at least in the kind of projects I've done, where I notice, I'm like, oh wow, this is a theme that I've been thinking about on a personal, psychological level. That means I should play this character, because I'm scared to talk about this in myself.
Right.
And, wanting to expose, again, and be able to work through it, like on camera. Which sounds really unhealthy, but I find it really works for myself. And in a way, allows it to feel honest, because it is, to a degree.
So it has to have. So you're not going to play a megalomaniac, like you can't. You're not interested in work that's not going to challenge you on that psychological level. Is that right?
To a degree, but that doesn't mean that they have to be a likable character.
Yes.
So yeah, they could be a character that's really unlikable and kind of evil. But I have to be able to see their truth, because at the end of the day, as the character, I'm making the decisions of this seems right to kill this person. Seems right. For me it does.
Yeah.
So yeah, there just has to be some truth in them that I can kind of relate to. Yeah.
And before we go, I'm just gonna go to Arrested Development briefly, because you in a way you kind of trained on Arrested Development, didn't you? Because, I mean, you'd been a performer for a long time, but that was a long period of time to work on one thing. Do you think, and I suppose it was also where a lot of people first came across you, and so it kind of helped form the you as an actor identity. Do you think it was helpful that it was kind of a quirky thing? Like, do you think people would maybe if you were, I don't know, a child actor in a in another thing that wasn't so kind of strange, do you think people would have been quite as willing to go with you on the journey of all of those particular projects you've chosen since?
It's hard to say. I mean, when you say strange, it's like well written, right? Is that what you mean? Yeah. I mean,
I just mean it did something nobody else was doing.
Right. It was like a new. Yeah.
It was a new thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, when I auditioned for it, I wasn't like, God, this is groundbreaking stuff. I was like, okay, so what do I do? Like, I was a kid, and it was that sensibility. Mitch Hurwitz actually told me later he saw a tape I had done for some other TV show that he was like executive producing or something, where it was for like the daughter, and I was put on tape for it, and he just saw it and was like, there's something, I like this girl, and then they paired me up with Michael Cera, and there's two other kids who were paired up together to be George Michael maybe, and me and Michael met. And he had come from Canada, which I thought was weird. And We just hit it off really well. Our moms became best friends, and we were just like, "Do you want to go to Cheesecake Factory after this?" And we did. But yeah, we were very like, we were acting, but it was very close. We were just kids, so we were just like kind of being ourselves. But yeah, that show, again, there's a lot of luck. Everyone has such different entryways into a career or whatever. There's so many, great actors who've done some really interesting, groundbreaking work, and you find out where they came from, and it's like some really shitty soap opera or like something, some bad sitcom, and it's like, so there's always different access points to, it's really about timing and luck. So much of that is involved. But Arrested Development was a strange thing because we made it, and 3 years, no one heard of it. No one ever heard of it. Everyone was just like, sure, sounds good, at least you're working, And I was like, yeah, I think it's funny, but I still had no awareness. I mean, we loved it. Yeah. There were still jokes we didn't get, though. Like, we'd do the table read, and I was like, why did everyone laugh at that? Like, I don't get it. So our sensibility of analyzing scripts and our sense of humor for Michael and I really, moved very quickly. And then it was really strange because we wrapped, I was 18, I moved to New York, wasn't working as an actor for a little while. That's when I kind of started painting, but I started getting recognized more than ever for Maybe. And I was like, this is so weird, that show's over. And he just kept growing and growing and growing to the point where 5 years later, they were like, we're actually gonna make it again. And it just became like an insane, like I met so many cool people that were like, you're Maybe from Arrested. I was like, yeah, can I come backstage? Like a lot of that happened. It was super cool. I met some rad musicians I was like fans of because everyone like loved this weird show. So in a way, like it did help, obviously it helped with my career, but I felt like it helped with my social life more than anything, really. But yeah, it was the sensibility of the people who liked it that, that kind of would help in the certain projects. And just like, but again, like almost more the sensibility of people I'd connect to, other artists. We would just end up being friends because we'd just like kind of get along, and then work would come out of that or something,
And was it also a little bit that it was a project where you started to get a little bit of that autonomy that you're talking about that you need to have now in order to work on a project? Like, did you get a glimpse of that in those early, or was it on the trailer a little bit?
Oh, right. Well, we had to go to school all the time, so the knock was even better. It was like, oh, thank God, get me out of here. But yeah, when you're a kid, like, it was so nuts. I would just have to do schooling every second in between filming. So, and me and Michael became like best friends, so it was fun. But it was you didn't get to experience a set. You didn't get to like hang out with the cast and the crew and get to know them. And yeah, there was definitely, I was able to understand so much and process stuff without even choosing to want to process it, if that makes sense. I was just like, oh, cool, I'm doing this. But I had a very normal life. I went to normal school and would come back and nobody gave a shit that I was like an actor on some show they had never heard of. Yeah. And even a little part of me afterwards, I was like, see, that was the show I was making. Now you like it, huh? But nobody cared. They're like, hey, you think you're cool because you go to LA? And I was like, yeah, I thought so. But yeah, it's more been like the last 5-6 years where I was like, okay, I've had all this experience and I really had to make a choice of how involved I wanted to be just in my art in general. How much do I really want to say? And there's more I want to say. So I decided to start speaking up a little bit more.
And is the final point, we're just about to wrap up here, but is the final point of sort of artistic autonomy in a filmmaking context directing, or is that not something that interests you?
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in directing. Duck Butter was the closest I got to it. Like Miguel definitely directed it, but we did so much of it together. But because of the role and the acting, I didn't want to feel the responsibility. I wanted to focus on the character. But after that, I realized so much. I was talking about this with someone the other day, just like how much permission we have to give ourselves to do things, whether you're an artist or anything. But I think especially as an artist, you're like, but I don't do that normally. That's not what people have liked me before doing, so I can't do it. And it's like you have to give yourself, you're the only one who could give you the permission to say, yeah, you could be a director, yeah, you could be a writer, you could do any of it. So I'm open to all of it. I'm just like trying to practice on that being more comfortable, allowing myself to, giving myself the permission to do it. Yeah.
Well, I think you should give yourself the permission to do lots more excellent things for us all. And
Thank
if
you.
we could all put our hands together for Alia Shawkat.
Thanks for coming, guys. I appreciate it.